how to write Hebrew. Okay, so we started off yesterday with a machlokes. Thank you so much. A machlokes between Reb Chisda, who says goes al v'loy nisyashu abaylim. If someone steals and the baylim are not miyayish, we perceive this object as if it's still within the rishus of the original owner. And if someone comes along and eats it or damages it, now the owner has two options as to where he can collect from. We look at it like each of these two people have an independent, they're joint and separately responsible for this object, and it gives the Bailam an easier way to retrieve his object. However, Rava argued on Reb Chisda, and Rava said that if once he steals it, he's the responsible party, and the second person doesn't have to give it back. And depending on how you learn pshat, it'll impact our Mishnah, because the Mishnah is agozul u'maichalas banav v'niich levaim turim l'shalom. So the question is, according to Reb Chisda, at first glance, this Mishnah doesn't fit because Reb Chisda holds Ratzami Zagoiva. So Reb Chisda was forced to learn that this Mishnah, our Mishnah, is speaking la'achar yish. After Yush, then it severs the ownership of the nigzal. There was another halacha we learned yesterday, and that was halacha of Rabbi Bar Chama. Rabbi Bar Chama said, we see from our Mishnah that hiniach lefnahem peturin milashalim. We see from here that there must have been a kinyan. Now, Rabbi Bar Chama, everyone besides Rav holds, Yush alone is not koina. In order to have a kinyan, you need Yush and Shina Rishos. So Rabbi Bar Chama says, since in our Mishnah says that by giving it to the children, it created a kinyan, and now they are petur and milashalim, it must be that it's considered a legal shina rishus when an item is going b'Yerusha from one person to the other. And therefore, and therefore there's a kinyan there. Rava argues on Rama B'chama and says rishus yorish lav rishus lakeach. Now that made enough gemina in a brisa. And if you hold rishus yorish lav rishus lakeach, that puts Rav a little bit on the defensive because if it's rishus yorish lav rishus lakeach, how is it that v'nich lefneim p'tur milashalim if rishus yorish is not rishus lakeach? How are they kind of? So Rava had to say that our Mishnah is discussing a case where the object was not be'en. So there turns out being a machlokes in our Mishnah. Whatever gzela was left over to the children, is it still around or is it no longer there? There's just a chiyuv to pay. According to Rava, if it was still there, it would have to go back because rishus yorish lav rishus lakech. The Gemara had a problem because Rebbe told Reb Shimon that this Mishnah is actually speaking in a case where it was ben. Rava had to argue with Rebbe and Reb Shimon as to how to understand our Mishnah. But Rava said, I have an ally, and his name is Reb Oishia, and Reb Oishia understood our Mishnah that it was speaking where it's not be'en anymore, and Rava said, since I'm such good buddies with Reb Oishia is going to come greet me, Reb Oishia is going to come greet me after I die. And someone sent me a beautiful shtickle from one of the Achronim that there was somebody who wrote he wrote a sefer on Rashi to for all of Tosfos' kashus on Rashi. And when he died, like a half hour before he died, he says, make a seat. I see Rashi here. Rashi is coming to greet me. So you could create an alliance with somebody in Yenevelt, and they'll come greet you. But I was thinking about it. Maybe I start working on that. But I realized it's a double-edged sword. Because my Rosh Yeshiva once told me, I don't care if you say my Torah in your name, but don't ever say your Torah in my name. So if you start coming up with pshatim to explain Rashi, and it's Nishka Shtoik and Nishka Floyen, I'm not sure if Rashi's going to be there with a stick or if he's going to be there with a welcome mat. So I guess if you do a good job, you'll have somebody there cheering for you. Or you could do better. Or you could write a sefer explaining the chumash like some pshat, and then they're going some way to you. But I hope he has to wait for a very, very, very long time. I hope he's not impatient. Okay.
I've always said, in Nucha 120, I'll have a few kashas for the Rebbeinu Shalom, but what I'm afraid of, he'll have a few kashas for me. And
Only a few. You're okay.
yeah.
Rabbi Levine told me he wrote a sefer on death. He wrote a sefer the Velas. So he said over a story with the Ramban, who had a Talmud, a young Talmud, who was very, very sick and eventually died. And the Ramban couldn't understand how could it possibly be, what could this nice yeshiva boy have done to deserve it? He said, I want you to go ask in the Bezin Shamayla, and I want you to come back and tell me in a dream. I can't live with it. I can't come to terms with it.
All these stories, the Neshama came for a reason. The reason was finished.
Maybe that's what he was fishing for. So what happened was the Talmud came back to the Ramban in the dream. There's a lot of stuff that happened in that dream, but he told the Ramban, when I got up here, I didn't want to ask the question that you told me to ask because it's so clear once you come here what's going on that I didn't want to humiliate you. If I would have said that kash in your name, you would have been the laughing stock of Olam Haba, because it's become so obvious and clear the reason for everything. Okay, so let's see. So what happened is in order to support Rava introduced Rav Oshia's version of the facts, and then we started trying to understand if Chisda fits in with Rav Oshia, Rabbi Chama fits in with Rav Oshia. So let's quickly look at this brayso. Rav Oshia said, "Hagoyzel l'maichalos banav." So Rav Oshia is sort of expanding. His brayso is expanding on our Mishnah. Petur milashalom, but in niach lefneim gzeila kayemes chayav. So you see right away, Rav Oshia made that distinction between if it's be'en or if it's not be'en, similar to the distinction that Rava made. In gzeila kayemes peturin. If the gzeila is not here anymore, it's potter, not be'en. So therefore, even if there was no shina rishus, because even if you hold like Rava, that rishus yosh lav rishus lakeach, it's still going to be potter because the gzeila is not be'en. If the father left over fields, and those fields automatically become a shubit to pay back any liabilities of the father, so if he stole, now these fields are liable to pay, then chayav l'shalom, even though the gzeila is not bad. So that the Gemara wants to see, does this fit in good with Chisda? The purpose of us bringing this brayso was to support Rava. But now the Gemara is probing, let's see if anybody else that we talked about here, if they're going to have an issue with this brayso that we just brought to support Rava. So Omar, Eina Gzela Kayamis Peturin. If the Gzela is not been Peturin, name it have a tiyuf to Reb Chisda, this would not stem with Reb Chisda. Why? Because Reb Chisda holds that you could go after either one. The nigzal can go after either one. Side the person who's told, and side the person that has it. So why do we say that Eina Gzela Kayamis Peturin? They stole it. They were the ones who ultimately ate it. Chisda says that's a different story. That I said goes off the nigzal can take anybody to court. That's but maybe this brayso is speaking lachayush. Then the Gemara says, let's see how well this brayso corresponds with Rabbi Bar Chama. Amar gzela kayem is chayav l'shalom. If the gzela kayem is chayav l'shalom, I rishus yorish rishus lakeach. There was a shina rishus. Name it to have to Rabbi Bar Chama. So Rabbi Bar Chama and Rabbi Chisda are going to have to understand the brayso of Rabbi Oshia in different ways. Rabbi Bar Chama is going to understand the brayso of Rabbi Oshia speaking l'fnei, and Rabbi Chisda is going to understand that the brayso is speaking l'achayush. So each one has a way to fully understand the brayso that we just brought as an aside to support Rava's claim that there's a difference between if it's be'en, where it goes back, and if it's not be'en, it doesn't go back. Okay, now we're up to a new sugya, Geshmak sugya. Now, Rabbi Bar Chama, that we quoted yesterday, was making a comment about Gzela. And he said, if someone stole and then he died and his children yarshened it, rishus yorish kashus lakeach. So if there was yush, now the child can keep it because the child's yarshening is as if he bought it. So what did he say it related to? He said it related to the geneva being nickness to the child. Rabbi Adam said, no. Masning Rabbi Bar Chama aha. Rami Bar Chama, when he said Rishus Yerush Rishus Lakeach, was referring to a different halacha. And then we're going to probe, does that mean it doesn't apply to Gzela? Maybe it does. And we're going to see the relationship between these two halachas. So what is the halacha? The halacha is ribbis. You're not allowed to accept ribbis. What if someone accepted ribbis and he and the father died? He had a lot of ribbis in his possession, and now those children, his children, yarshin it. Even if the children know that their father illegally and unlawfully took ribbis, nevertheless, ein chayav in lahachs. You're not allowed to give it back. You're not allowed to give it back. I'm sorry, not you're not allowed. You're not mechuyev to give it back. You're not mechuyev to give it back. So Rabbi Bechama said, if the father was alive, of course he would have to give it back. These children now don't have to give it back. It must be the father had that money unlawfully, so technically it should go back. But there's yus and shina rishus. There's always yus because the person who's paying the ribbis is paying it willingly. So therefore, the children get to keep it because the shina rishus allows the children to keep it. Zok to Gemara, Rava Amar. Rava says from here you don't have a raya, and just like Rava refuted Rami Bar Chama's comments when he was in reference to Gzela, here Rava is refuting Rami Bar Chama's comments that he said in reference to ribbis. And he said, maybe it's Rishus Yoris, Lav Kashus Lakeach. I ain't chayav and lahachser. You know why it's ain't chayav and lahachser? Because the reason why, there's a huge chiddush, the reason why you give back ribbis isn't because you took something that's unlawfully yours, like a gneva. No, it's yours fair and square. There's a special Gzeres HaKosuv that says it has to go back, and the Gzeres HaKosuv is addressing a specific person. V'shayni hacha, the Yomarkra, the pasuk says, Al tikach me'itay neshech v'sarbis, and the pasuk says why? Ahadirlei ki heichid in achai b'hadach. It says v'chai achicha imach. Let me see if I can find the pasuk here. Al tikach me'itay neshech v'sarbis v'yireisim alakecha v'chai achicha imach. You have to let your brother live with you to have a brotherly thing, and it's only an issue to take it, and therefore you have to give it back. The children have nothing to do with this issue, and therefore the v'chei imach is only going on the person that took the ribbis, and therefore l'didei kamazer le'rachmana, but libarei, the son of the person who took the ribbis, le'mazer le'rachmana. So Zok Rava, from the fact that a child doesn't have to give back ribbis, doesn't prove anything at all. Like kinyonim, like Rishus Yerush Rishus Lakeach, because there's a special Gzeres HaKosuv that the father has to give it back and not the child. Okay, so Zok Gemara, we had two versions of Rami Bar Chama's halacha. One person learned it on the Brisa, which is what we just learned, and one person said that Rami Bar Chama was addressing the Mishnah where it's a kinyan kazach. So let's analyze this. Man de Matila Brisa. The person who understood that Rami Bar Chama was addressing the Brisa, the case of ribbis, kol shekena masnisin, surely in a Mishnah. Why? Because in the Brisa you could have easily attributed the fact that the son doesn't have to give it back to the pasuk of Echei Imach that Rava suggested. So if you're even going to learn in the case of ribbis that it's working with a din of Rishus Yoris, Rishus Lakeach, surely the Mishnah which doesn't have that special pasuk of Echei Imach, surely there it would work with the mechanism of Rishus Yoris, Rishus Lakeach. But the Masnin La Masnisen, but someone who only quoted Rami Bar Chama as addressing the Mishnah, Aval Abraisa, you wouldn't have a raya, because Rami Bar Chama Rabbi Masila, maybe Rami Bar Chama would not have been able to bring a raya from the Brisa, because maybe Rami Bar Chama also agrees with the special pasuk by ribbis of the Cheyach Imach to pater the child from returning the ribbis. It's interesting to note that by the parsha of ribbis, the Torah is saying, you know why you know how to do it? Because the Chayach Imach, it's a din of brothers. You know that certain Rishonim, I believe the Rambam learns that there's a mitzvah to take ribbis when you lend money to a guy. So ribbis isn't such an evil thing. If you think about it logically, why should interest be an evil thing? If you were in my house, you're using my house, I charge you rent. If you're using my money, I'm allowed to charge you a fair amount for the use of my money. Today it's a normal thing, right? I invest money, I'm lending money. It's not a bad thing to take ribbis. It's a very normal way of doing business. So why is it that Hashem doesn't let us take ribbis from a yid? Because achicha. Yes, it's a normal thing to take ribbis, but not from your brother. Someone needs a place to stay, you let him stay in your basement apartment, you might charge him rent. But if your brother needs a place to stay, there you're not going to charge him rent. So the whole mitzvah of ribbis, I'm sorry? You're allowed to, yeah.
So then why don't we learn a few other things like letting people stay in your
There's
house?
actually 3 halachas in the Torah where the Torah refers to achicha. One of them is when you sell a house, your brother, no one else is allowed to be goylet for you, but your brother is. So there are actually 3 halachas. Mintzberg once spoke. I once heard him speak by one of his children's eifrufs, and he spoke about the 3 halachas where the Torah makes a distinction between a regular person and a brother. So 3 of the halachas, I don't remember all 3, but one of them was ribbis. I'll ask Mintzberg today, and if I remember, I'll say it over tomorrow. The Torah is trying, with ribbis, the Torah is not trying to say ribbis is bad. The Torah is trying to say we need to treat each other as brothers better than we would treat a regular person, and things that are perfectly normal in business, when it comes to a brother, you have to treat him different. It's a din of achicha. That's the main point of it. But the ribbis, but etzim is not a bad thing. It's just that to a brother, you treat better.
I think there's another pasuk that says really it sucks the
That's right.
There's something negative, something
I
very
guess for your brother, it's negative, but to a stranger, it's a normal thing, right? Everybody gets interest in the bank. I mean, the bank takes more from you than you give to them, but it could be a loan shark type of interest is bad. But the pasuk does use a derogatory term that it sucks the lifeblood out of somebody. I remember the exact nusach. That's right. You know, every time anyone goes to a bank branch, they're always trying to push their products on you. So the first thing they want to offer me is a credit card. So I always ask them, okay, what is the interest rate? They said, I don't know, 76%, whatever it is, they rip you off. And then they say, okay, you don't want the credit card. How about, would you like to put a term deposit in with us? I said, how much interest do you give? 0.01% interest. I said, I love your 2 interest rates, but how about we flip it around? I'll give you my money and you can give me your 27% interest. And then when you lend me money on the credit card, I'll pay 0.01. Oh, we don't do that. I said, we don't do that either. So but the brazenness with which they proudly offer you the product while they're telling you, we want to rip you off, please sign here. Okay, so to more about there. Someone who steals and is Michael's kids, our Mishnah, Peturim in the Shalit. This so far it's with our Mishnah, now we're going to start making a distinction. What if he left the actual gzeil in front of the children? Gedolim chayavin l'shalom, ketanim peturim l'shalom. Gedolim have to pay, ketanim don't have to pay. This is a big chiddush. Our Mishnah does not say that. Our Mishnah doesn't make a distinction between an adult and a child. Anybody who steals and gives it to the children, if it's be'en, it goes back. But our Brisa here is making a distinction, and the Gemara is going to tell us soon that this is the sheet of sumchus. Not everybody holds like sumchus, but this is the sheet of sumchus that ketanim are potter from paying. What if the Gedolim said, yes, our father stole, but I don't know what type of things what type of affairs he had with you, whether you had owed him money for other things, so maybe it was all paid off. Then patur in their pot. How could you say that? Mishum the Amri ain't only yoidim turin. That's a bari b'shema. They know for sure. Everybody knows for sure it was stolen. Tosfos says either they were moide or with her edim. We know this is stolen. So what type of times maybe my father paid you back? How could you say such a thing? It's bari b'shema bari yodim. We look through our father's books and we see that there's a loan that you owe him. That's exactly the amount of this gneva. Therefore, he owes you nothing. Then Petur, and then they are going to be potter. How are they believed? With what demonis are they going to be believed? So the halacha is they're believed either with a migui or with a pesha asar. So Tosha says either it's a migu. So you they have a migu. They could have said that we gave it back. Even if there are edim that come along and say, my father stole this money, you can say, I paid back. And you wouldn't be able to prove otherwise. Inami kagoin she'ein edig zela. Maybe there were no edig zela. The only way we know that there's this gzela here by the children is because the children themselves brought it up. And Pesha Iter, they themselves who brought it up also said that our father doesn't know you anymore. Tanya Idach. Hagozel umaychel, someone who steals and then gives it to his children. Again, our Mishnah, Vana Ptur Milashalim, his children are supposed to pay. And Nichlef name va'achlam, if he left it in front of them and they ate it, Bein Gedolim, Bein Kedanim Chayavin, which of course is the Rabbanon that argue on Sumchas and holds that Ketanim are also Chayiv. Zot Gemara, Ketanim mi Mechayiv? I don't understand. How could Ketanim be Chayiv? Lo Yehei Elo the Azakazuka. Even if a coin barges into somebody else's rishos and is mazik, some of the person's property, we learned that Cher Shoyde V'Katan Pegiyas and Ra. There's no chi for a katan to pay. We had a whole discussion. Maybe if the child grows up later on, does he have to pay? But he sure doesn't have to pay. So what does it mean that the ketanim are chayiv? Ketanim are never chayiv. Omar Papa Hachik Omar. This is what it means. In diach lefneim badayin lo yachlo. If it's still be'en, then ben gedolim ben ketanim chayovin, because we're not making the kids pay. This object still belongs to the original owner, so he gets to take it back. But if the children ate it, you can't be mechayiv the children because, in fact, the katan is not liable. Gavalti. So Rashi just sums it all up. If it's still be'en, then afilu ketanim chayavim. Why? Even the gzela kayemes, since the gzela is still here, it still belongs to the original nizl and it goes back. For Rabbanon, this Rabbanon here that hold that a katan is chayiv to pay, who the pligila, the sumchis, he'll argue on sumchis. Because the Brisa del Il is going according to Sumchis. So we, in fact, have a machlokes, Sumchis and the Rabbanon, whether or not if it was Be'en, if it goes back or not. Amarava. What about not a case of Ksela? What about a case of She'ela? In Yechlem, Par Avim, Par Ashula. The father borrowed a par. Let's say he borrowed it for 6 months. He died after a month. So the term of the She'ela is still ongoing. And the father dies. What's the deal with this para? We don't say that the term of the shayla is terminated automatically. Rather, the rental contract or the loan contract continues until it expires. Mesa, if it dies, ain't chayavim b'amsel. And Rashi explains they have the right to it because the father borrowed it, but they're not chayv the loy kabilu alayim tirusa. The children will never makabel a chiyav shmir. So they get the benefits of the she'ela without the liabilities of the she'ela. There's actually a machlokes Rishonim. The Ravid quotes Rishonim as saying that it's two separate things. They could be mishtamish v'akol yimei she'elasa, but if they were not mishtamish with it, so by them being mishtamish with it, they become now the she'el. If they didn't touch it, just sat there kol yimei she'elasa, then mesa ain't chayav by itself. But if they actually used it, they would be chayav. But the Ravid said that's not true. The Ravid said even if they actually use it, they only take on the chiyuv of they only take on the benefits of the contract of the sheila, but they're not mochim on.
Father be chayiv
if he was alive?
Yeah.
Of course. Where's father be chayiv? The father is liable as a sheila. Zok to Gemara, Kisvurim shalavimi. What if they didn't know it was borrowed? They thought it was their father's animal. V'tavchua v'achlua, and they shechted it and they ate it. The value of the meat of a pearl like this could have been worth $2,000. They don't have to pay $2,000 because they would have never eaten such expensive meat. They were on a very tight budget. So what do they pay? Mishalman demei basabasa. They just pay much in the henna. They pay the bare minimum. Rashi says that's about 2/3 of what the value is because they would have had to eat anyway, but they wouldn't have eaten such an expensive meal had they not known. So here's where you have the shaila of why isn't this covered by the rule of adamud lo'olam? Adamud lo'olam. They ate. They didn't realize that it was an animal that didn't belong to their father. Adamud lo'olam. They should pay in full. So in the past couple of weeks, I mentioned it several times. That Tosfos makes a distinction even when adamud lo'olam between a regular oinus and oinus gomer. Here they had no way of possibly knowing that this was not their father's animal. That's an oinus gomer. And there, even an Adam Amasik is potter. And Tosfos makes a distinction between an oinus that's like a gneva, where they're innocent, someone came and took it, versus an oinus that's similar to a naveda, which is a little bit negligent, it's a little bit shemazelik on their part. They lost something. So Tosfos uses those two terms to describe, even in Adam Amasik, when it's an oinus, there's different level of oinus. Not all oinus are created equal. And this is one of Tosfos' main rise, our Gemara, why if they ate the meat of of the owner thinking that it was their father's, that they only have to pay to Mei Basar B'Sar. Hiniach lehem aviem achrayis nechas. What if the father left fields that are mishubah to pay back for any chayiv that he has? Then chayav in l'shal. Then he has to pay back. Now, what is this talking about? This is talking about if they ate the meat, or this is even talking about if the animal died. There are those who say even if the animal died, not due to their action, they're still chayiv to pay if there is a chrayis nechasim. Now, what would be the deciding factor as to whether or not the chrayis nechasim should cover the damages due to the shayla? It's totally in the following shayla. At what point does the chiyuv to pay for this borrowed animal come? Is it come as soon as he rents it, as soon as he borrows it, as soon as the owner, as the borrower, takes possession and becomes an official shoyl? You say at that point there's a personal liability on him and his nechasim to pay it back? And if that's the case, then it was chal while the father was alive, so his field took on a liability while he was alive. Or do you say no, a person is scot-free, but there's halacha by a shoyl, if something happens at that moment, time of the damage, there creates a chiyuv which will now go on any karka that he has. If that's the case, here the animal died after the father died. So therefore, when the animal died, it would not have created a shibud on the nechas. So that would be the shayla. So Zok Gemara, Ika demasila reisha, Ika demasila seifa, Demasila reisha, Kol shekina seifa. If it just died on its own, you're chayiv to pay. You're surely chayiv to pay if you ate it. Upliga de Rapapa, and therefore they would argue on Rapapa because Rapapa holds that the chiyuv doesn't come until later. By the Masla Seifa of Reisha Loi, and the Rapapa that stems with the Rapapa's halacha, Dom Rapapa. Rapapa says the chiyuv only comes once the damage occurs. If you had a stolen parah, so there everybody agrees by Geneva your liability starts the moment you stole it, and therefore the Tavcha b'Shabbos and you shechted it on Shabbos, chayiv you'll still be chayiv dal v'hei. You know why? There's no conflict with the rabbin because the chiyuv for the Geneva already came before Shabbos. Estimich fragen, but the tvicha was on Shabbos. Zogt Rashi, the tvicha that a teveach pays dal vei, that's a knas. Knas is not subject to the rules of kamei b'drabim. But if you wouldn't pay the keren, then you don't have the dal vei. So therefore, since there's keren here, because the Geneva was not on Shabbos, there will still be a chiv dal vei. But how's the parasha ulaloi v'tavcha b'Shabbos? You're potter from the keren. Shabbos v'shur Geneva aboim ke'echad. Because your liability starts when this animal is no longer there anymore. But at the time of the Ja'elo, there was no liability, and therefore the Achrayis Nechosim of the father is not liable to pay back for the Sheil. Tanu Rabbanim, the Hejiv is Gzela Asher Gozal. You have to give back to Gzela. Which Gzela Asher Gozal? What else are you supposed to give back? Mata B'Loim Asher Gozal, Yachzer Kein Shagozal. You only give it back if it is Kein Shagozal, Mikan Amru, Hagozal L'Maichel Osbanov, now this is an extremely important line because if you look on the Amud Beis and Kufiyat Aleph and Beis, all these big toisves in where we discuss Rav Chisda and Rava and Rabbi Chama, there's some difficulties that come up, and the difficulties that come up is in certain cases where there was no kinyan. Why would it be that you don't have to pay? The teretz is there's a special gzeres because of as kein shagaz yashu kein shagazol mikanomer agazol machlos banda petur milashalim. Why is it that if the ganim stole food, it was be'en, and the children ate it, why shouldn't the children be chayiv? It's because of the gzeres hakosov of a heshav esagzel. Henich lefnein ben gedolim and ben ketanim chayavin, and now we have Sumchas himself. We should Sumchas amru gedolim chayavin ketanim peturin. Sumchas holds that Ketanim are going to be potter, even if it's be'en. Okay, now that takes us to the end of this sugya of Yosh and Shina Rishos. We chazed that over a little bit. We had the shaila of Ketanim having to pay back the neighbor of their father. We had the shaila of Yosh Kishush Lakeach. We've sealed that sugya, and now we're going to have an interesting follow-up story. Bar Chamura de Rabbi Yirmiyah. So let's think about it. The son of the father-in-law of Rabbi Yirmiyah. In other words, Rabbi Yirmiyah's brother-in-law. Rabbi Yirmiyah had a brother-in-law. His wife had a younger sister who was a smart kid, but he was also on the bar mitzvah. And he was afraid that after their father died, and he was afraid that Rabbi Yirmiyah would come in and be machzik on the house, on his house that he grew up in, and he's going to lose his house. So you know what he did? Tarak Gali Bape. He locked the door. He locked Rabbi Yirmiyah out of the house. He locked Rabbi out of the house. You know, by Hasidus, and they're afraid that the brother-in-law is going to take over, so they lock him out of the basement. So they locked him out of the house. This way, there's no chance of him making a chazak. So Tarak Gali Bape Rabbi Yirmiyah. So Rabbi Yirmiyah wasn't going to have a physical fight. He didn't have 50 Chassidim to go beat up the other Chassidim. So he had to go to Bezdin. So Asad Lakamei Rabbi. He went to Rabbi and Bezdin. And Rabbi Avin told him, Omar, and I'm not sure if this is Rabbi Avin talking or if it's Rabbi Yirmiyah talking. I'm going to touch it as if it's Rabbi Yirmiyah, Rabbi Avin talking. Rabbi Avin told him, Shaloyu Teveya. I don't know, it's the child stuff, it's from his father. I'm not sure if that's how the article touches. What does the article say? Who is Shaloyu Teveya? Is it Rav Avin saying that the child is Teveya, or is Rabbi Yirmiyah saying it's mine? Rav Avin says the child's thing, so the child is justified in preventing you from making a chazaka. Amar lei v'masina sahadi ta'achzakabei b'chay davua. I can bring Adam that I was already machzik in this house while their father was alive, while my share was alive, and it's mine fair and square. So give me a din tire. Amar lei Rav Avin said, I'm afraid I can't, because children don't have awareness, and these are children here. The chimikablin Adam turning onto the Amid Beis. If the child's there, it's as if he's not there. You can't be Makabal Edim, Shaloi B'fnei Baldin, as Rashi says, V'hai Kotten Command Lesadam. Now, this halacha, that you cannot be Makabal Edim, Shaloi B'fnei Baldin, there's one element of Svara in it, and that is, the Svara is, if a person is there to protect himself, so then he can argue, he can refute the Edim, he can cross-question the Edim. But someone who's defenseless, you can't stand dintar against him. But we also know there's an element of a gezer sakosov that says you can't do any dintar unless the baldin's there. Because if you remember, we once had a shaila, does the behema that's going to be chayiv skila because it killed somebody, does it have to be invested? Remember, there was the whole time that could the Bailam say, I would have stashed my behema away, and therefore Bezdin couldn't have found it, and Bezdin couldn't have been goymer din. And then there was a sheet thing of Tarvin says that doesn't help, because they could be goymer din anyway. What do you need the animal? The animal cannot make its own tinus. So there's actually a shaila, if an animal also has that right, because of kamisas abayim kach misas hashor. But I'll call upon him, there's definitely a svara that you can't make it entire if the baldin's not there. He can't make arguments. We learned on a price just a number aleph that even a cotton they can go back and take the gzeil away from him. So why are you telling me? So Rabbi Yirmiyah is asking Rabbi Avin, why are you telling me you can't make it entire? I have a price that said you could make it entire. Amar lei, Rabbi Avin says, what do you mean? Harei machloikis sumchas b'tzida. Sumchas holds you can't take money away from a cotton. Right? He's k'tanim turin. Amar, so he said, I don't understand. You never talk about sumchas. Suddenly, when I need my money, and when sumchas works for me, all of a sudden, when sumchas works against me, all of a sudden now everyone holds sumchas. Ich will kula alma. The koika sumchas. Everyone's folding like a cheap deck of cards under sumchas rule. Lafkui l'didi to mess me up. Today, don't pass on sumchas. What's milsa shamir, right? Adahachi. In the meantime, igadol milsa also and what the kamed Rabavo. This child came to Rabavo, and Rabavo weighed in on what the halacha should be. Amar, he said, we have a precedent. He made a psak that I believe would be relevant to this shiloh here. Rashi learns in the first shot that he took his team, he took his gabuim, and he went and he grabbed, unlawfully, he grabbed someone's field. And he said, it's mine. We don't say, oh, he's a cotton, sorry. Yeah, he gets to keep it. You got to wait until he grows up. We take the karka away from him immediately, meaning we do still the entire with him. And if he's right, then let him bring Adam when he's an adult. And we'll see. Zokt Rabbi Yirmiyah, that you can't make me right from there. There's a very big difference over there. Midami. Hasam, who the mafkina minay. I'm sorry. Rabbi Yirmiyah liked this psak. This worked for Rabbi Yirmiyah. He wanted to make a dintar right away. Rabbi Avin said, no, you can't bring a riot from there. The Hasam who the mafkina minay. You know why they're taking it away from this child? He doesn't have a chazaka davua. He's going now to somebody else's property and trying to steal it. So Tosfos makes a very important point. The Gemara could have made a different point. The Gemara could have said, here the kid's a muhsik, he's in the place. There, the kid's going to take something away. It doesn't say that. No. Zaktoisis, it's only if it's a chazaka davua. It's only if it's a chazaka davua. As Toisus says over here, mashma dahainu afilu hayu Rabbi Yirmiyah b'soicha bayis. Even if Rabbi Yirmiyah was in the house, it doesn't make a difference. And he would be the muhsik, wouldn't make a difference. Midol mablak hasam balasoda muhsik basada. Hacha Rabbi Yirmiyah lahayu muhsik mashma l'tolabach midi. It's not only in the fact that he's in the field or not. So even if Rabbi Yirmiyah was in the house, the chazaka from the avos belongs to the son, and that trumps. The Gemara says that trumps. So therefore, you want to take it away from his chazaka dovua, and you want to stelzach in the Torah. A cotton cannot come to the Torah. Yes, if the cotton is grabbing somebody else's field, and he has no chazaka dovua, yeah, there you throw him right out. But here, the cotton has the chazaka, he has the upper hand, and you can't throw him out, and you're gonna have to wait. So Rabbi Yirmiyah was out of luck. Amar Abashi, Amar Pshapsoi, Mekablim Edim, Shaloi B'fnei Baldim. You could be Mekabel Edim, Shaloi B'fnei Baldim. Toy by Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan was wondering, is that possible? V'chi Mekablim Edim, Shaloi B'fnei Baldim. So Rabbi Yochanan didn't like that. So Kibble B'nei Rabbi Yochanan B'chanina, Rabbi Yochanan B'nei says, you know what? I think what it means is, it's not across the board. Mekablim Edim, Shaloi B'fnei Baldim. It's only because Hayu Choyla, Hay Edav Choylin. It's only if there's an urgency over here. It's not clear in the Rishonim if it's either the plaintiff is sick or the defendant is sick, but either way there's an urgency to get this entire done quickly, or if the Edom were sick, again, if they're not going to be able to say testimony, we got to chop their testimony now, or if the Edom needed to go away, and therefore we needed their testimony right now. And then it says, and they sent him and didn't come. So Tosus is medayik that Vishalchol of Leba seems to be going back in all these cases. In all these cases, by default, you don't just make the entire. You have to also send and summon the nitva to come, and he still refuses to come based on the Shalchol and these other factors. Then you're allowed to make an entire, not in front of Baldin. But Tosus brings down another shita that holds the Shalchol of Leba is an independent time. Meaning any one of these things automatically make it entire, or if Bezin summoned him and he ignored the summons, then you're also allowed to paskin shaloi b'fnei baldin, and that's going to become clear in just a moment. Amar Rabbi Dobar Shmuel, mekabel meidim shaloi b'fnei baldin. Amar Mar Ukva l'didim mefer shaloi b'nei Shmuel. It's not across the board that you could be mekabel eidim shaloi b'fnei baldin. It's kagoyin the paschulei b'dinei. They already opened up a entire v'shalchulei, and they sent to the nitva, come to court. V'loyos, and he didn't come. I want to go to the best Nagadol. You want to take me to court? Fine. Let's go to the best Nagadol in Yerushalayim. So the Tosus is medayik from here. Here, the only thing there was the Shalchula. There wasn't a mitigating factor that the Edom were sick or they're going to Medina Sayyam. So that's why Tosus brings a raya into one shita that the mere fact that he was summoned and didn't come is enough that you could paskin, Bezin could paskin Shalei b'fnei Baldim. Iyachi ki paschalei nami matzi amala leves Nagadol asilma. So even if they're middle of the entire already, why can't you say, I don't like the way things are going, I want to transfer this to the best Nagadol, which of course is not Kishmak to schlep his plaintiff up to Bezdin. Amravina according to Nakat Diska mi best Nagadol. Here the case is they were already at best Nagadol. And best Nagadol already said, enforce my ruling in the lower court. So now he's in the lower court trying to enforce the ruling of the higher court that he was already at. There he can't say anymore, let's go to the best Nagadol. Now we're no longer talking about an actual Torah where we're making somebody pay. We're just making kiyum star. So kiyum star is what validates my star. So when it comes time for me to mon, I'm on. So when they're passing on kiyum star, they're not passing on an immediate, on a present situation of someone paying. Right? They're just setting it up. Even that you can't do. You know why Rabbi Yochanan says that even the kiyum star, you have to have the other baldin there? We know that in order for a shor to become a shor muad, there had to be an incident where Bezdin warned him 3 times and he didn't pay. At the time of the warning, when it's becoming a muad, there's no money being exchanged. It's only going to be relevant. It's only going to be relevant later on. So you see from here that a person's allowed to fight for his financial rights, even if it's not directly going to affect a current exchange of cash, but he's allowed to fight and represent himself to protect his position. Amarava. You are allowed to be Mekayim Star Shalai B'Tnei Baldin. Even if the loiv is screaming, it's not true. These are false. The star is false. You ignore the loiv is pleas. But the Amar Nikituli Zimna Adam Asina Sahadi Umaran Leilishtar. But if he says, listen, give me some time, I will be able to produce Adam that will tell you, that will prove to you that this star is Mezuyif. Then Naktinulay will give him some time. He also, if he brings Adam good for him. Eloy also, if he doesn't succeed in bringing the Adam, Natrinulay Bahab, we give him a Monday, Thursday, and Monday. Eloy also, if he doesn't show up, Kasvinan Psicha Iluya, they write a Psicha, which is a star Shamta. They put him in the Chayim. They call him to the entire, he didn't come. They put him in the Chayim and they write a star in the Chayim. You could put him in the Chayim without actually writing a star about the Chayim. Writing a star about the Chayim is more severe, because if they just put him into Chayim, they can release the Chayim at any time once he complies. But if they wrote a star Chayim, then in order to release the Chayim, they make him pay for the writing of the star. That costs the money. Now you want us to release the Chayim, you're going to have to pay the site. So why do you give him 90 days? Because Tishin Yoimin, 90 days. You give him 90 days before you put him into Chayim. Why? Why 90 days? Tolasin Kamay, the first 30 days, we give him Loy Nachtinul Nichsei. And I'm sorry, you write a star Chayim on him right away, he doesn't want to come. Now we got to go seize his assets. So Tishin Yoimin, we don't seize his assets for 90 days. Tolasin Kamay, the first 30 days, Loy Nachtinul Nichsei, the Amar Katarch Bezuzei of Venezia. He's trying to find money, he's trying to borrow money, so he's trying to put together the money. So you can't sanction him. Don't take away his nechasim. He's trying to find the money to pay back. Mitziyai, the next 30 days, you know why? He was not able to find anybody that was willing to lend the money, and he's trying to find a buyer. So give him 30 days to market his field. At least he'll be able to sell it and bring in some good money with which he'll pay back. And the third set of 30 days, you can't. Maybe he made the sale, but now the lekeich has to have time to put the money together. That's when you give him 90 days. What if he didn't come after 90 days? Then kasvinan adrachta nichsei, and the drachta is a star that says, go figure out the value of these fields. These fields are all allowed to be liquidated in order to pay back the mal. V'hanamili the amar asina. This that we give him the 90 days is if he keeps saying, yeah, I'm coming, I'm working on it. Awal amar lo yasina. But if he lifted up a big middle finger to Bez and says, there's no way I'm coming, he's ignoring them, then alter kasvina. Then you don't give him 90 days. And on the spot, they can write on the drachta to seize his nechasa. V'hanamili b'milva. And this only applies by a milva because it makes sense that he doesn't have the money. He spent it. That's why he borrowed it. Aval will be caught. But if there's a pikadon involved, where it should still be right there in his rishos, there the alter kasvinan. If he denies a pikadon, then you write the star a drachta right away. The chichasvinan amakarki. And when you write on the drachta, you only allow them, the malva, to seize karka, property. Aval amataltli. But what if he has property that's not land, not real estate, but he has other valuable items? Loy, you'll never allow that. Why? If they give the metalton to the malva might deplete it, and the loyvim might end up coming back, proving that he was not liable. And then he retroactively messes up the star. The malva will have nothing left to pay back. But if you give him property, then the islay karka, I'm sorry. But if we're taking karka away from the loiva, and that's what the malva has, real estate will never disappear. He'll always be able to get it back. But the isla mekarka malva. But if the malva has property, then kasvinin, then you could even seize metaltlin of the loiva, because even if those metaltlin are gone, the loiva can go after the malva's property. But it's not true. Adrachta metaltlin loy kasvinin. It's a hard fact. You don't write on the drachta. We don't seize metaltlin. We only seize karka. Avagav the islay mekarki. Even though the malva does have karka, so the loiva does have recourse, but chashin and tamatichsef, we're afraid the karka will get ruined, so therefore we do not allow the malva ever to seize metaltlin from a loiva. And when you write that drachta, Bezdin doesn't just write the drachta, they notify the loiva, you should know, we wrote in the drachta on you, and we're coming to take your property. When do they tell him? The mikra. That's if he's close by. If he's too far away, they don't have to tell him. What if it's far away, but he has relatives close by that we could tell, and then they'll bump into them, and they'll pass on the message. Or there's regular people always traveling back and forth to that far away place where the loiva is, that we're seizing his property. Then Mashinale Tresa Yachishata will give him 12 months the Osla of so that he'll hear about it. Kihad Ravina, like the case of Ravina, Shar Lamaracha, Maracha wanted to collect from some people, and he made Maracha wait Tresa Yachishata Ada Osla of Asisharasa Mi Bechazoi until the message got back and forth from the Bechazoi that he was notified. That's where these loivas lived. They lived in Bechazoi, and he wanted to make sure that they're notified. But for loy, it's not a riot. If he lives far away, even if there's sheyarasa, you don't have to wait. The reason why Ravina waited is Hasam Inish Alima, but they're very strong people. And if someone just comes to take your property away, they'd kick him off. But if they were notified in advance that this is sanctioned by the Bezdin, then they'll back off. Therefore, you have a mata drachta liyodei, lo have a abshir lafukim. Even with the drachta, they would not have accepted it unless they were notified by Bezdin that in the drachta was written and it was legit. But in the normal case, you don't wait at all. The shliach will depart on Tuesday. Why on Tuesday? Because the entire probably happened on Monday. Because the entire is Monday and Thursday. So the shliach will depart the next day. They'll come back on Wednesday. So I guess it's a day trip to wherever he's notifying the loiva. And on Thursday, he will be able to be invested and start taking his property. Now we're changing subjects a little bit, and we're talking about when Bezdin sends a shliach to summon somebody to Bezdin. So he's going to come back and say, I summoned him. Does he have Adam that he summoned him? It's similar to when you're serving a document. Do you need two witnesses that saw that you served the document? No. You're believed to say that you served the document. So when he says that I served the document, I told them that Bezdin is summoning him, they're believed, which means Bezdin can take action based on his report. That's only to write, to put a guy in here. If you're going to write a star of chayrim, which now will cost money for this person when he complies to release it, he'll have to pay for it. Even the moment of since it's causing him a loss of money, the there, in order to write a star of chayrim, a star of psicha, the person serving and summoning this person to Bezdin has to have Adam that he did so, and only then will I write up a star of chayrim. Amar Ravina, Yavina Zimna, Apuma de Itza, Vapuma de Shivavi. You also will give time if there's a woman who's going to be able to deliver the message, or if there's a neighbor who's going to be able to deliver the message. So Rashi says, you can send out Zmana through a woman, will trust them that they could do it. And if the person doesn't respond to the summons, it doesn't come, they'll put a guy into chayrim based on a summons delivered by a woman or by a neighbor. You only say that if this fellow, that the person who's being summoned, is not in the city. But if he's in the city, we can't assume that his friends, his neighbors, or this woman is going to deliver the message. They'll say, maybe they didn't give the message. They're not going to bother delivering the message because they'll figure he passes by the Bezdin anyway. So Bezdin probably told him, so they'll forget to tell him. As well, the only time we say that we can rely on them is only if his path, whenever he travels, he's never passing by the Bezdin. If these people who you sent to summons him knows that he's going to pass by the Bezdin and you're going to be able to see him directly, Loi Amri, they're not going to deliver the message because they'll say, Loy, they won't, because Amri, they'll say, if they pass right by the Bezin, Bezin probably told them themselves, we don't need to. They told them. Well, that's only if he'll come by day. Well, that's what we if he doesn't come that same day, he doesn't come back until the next day. Loy, they'll remember to tell him a message today. Tomorrow, they're not going to remember. So there's a lot of limitations to how secure we can be in knowing that they deliver the summons, depending on the situation. Okay, we'll stop here and we will tomorrow.